Um, Good day, everyone. My name is David Failing. I'm with Lucas Diesel Systems. And on behalf of Lucas Diesel Systems, we'd like to welcome everyone to this second webinar of 2024. I believe I mentioned this the last time, but for those of you who are new or weren't with us in January, we're going to be having these monthly webinars for the rest of 2024. Tony has very kindly agreed to that, and we very much appreciate that. And we look forward to having new subject matters, every single month in this 2024. A couple of housekeeping items. For those of you who participate for the entire webinar today, we will be sending you a certificate of attendance at this webinar. And we will be doing the same thing for each one of the webinars of this year. So you can look forward to receiving that shortly after the webinar finishes. In order to remove any distractions, we will also be muting everyone. So what I would suggest is if you have some questions, if you move your mouse around at the bottom of the screen or sometimes at the top of the screen, it all depends how you've got it figured out. But you can place your questions in the Q&A button. So if you've got some questions, feel free to put them in there. And at the end of the webinar, we will be addressing all those questions. Before we get started, I'd like to do just a little bit of promotion or plug for Lucas Diesel Systems. When your need arises for fuel injection parts, if you'd like to consider Lucas Diesel Systems for your parts, we have a complete array of common rail parts for not only the injectors, but for the high pressure pumps as well. So, and a multitude of other components that we have available for common rail as well as heavy duty injectors. So please consider us when your need arises for common rail parts. Before we get started here, I'd like to just give you a little bit of information with regards to Tony. Tony is a veteran technician and instructor for light duty diesel systems. He has his shop in Las Vegas, and he also is an instructor for powertrain training. So the title to Tony's presentation this morning or today, depending on your time zone, is Service Information Use. So Tony, I'd like to hand it over to you. It's all yours.
Well, good morning, good afternoon. Tony Salas back online here with Lucas Diesel. Thank you, David. Thank you for the introduction. Things have been interesting this past January. I know we're in February already, already mid-February, but this past January we had quite a bit of training. It was a busy January, but now February's kind of tapered down. But what I wanted to talk about was it's been an interesting month in relation to the topic. What is the topic? Well, I kind of changed it a little bit. Service information, can you benefit from it? Well, the answer is pretty self-explanatory, in my opinion, but some of you may agree or may not agree. Uh, yeah, when I was developing the topics for Lucas on what we're going to teach for the first, 4 to 6 months of this year, was what is topics to keep up, keep you interested and hopefully get some understanding of this. And service information was not very hard to actually come up with because of the fact that we see a lot of shops out there. And those of you that don't know, I do travel from time to time, and I visit shops. I go work at shops. I was at a shop in Denver in January. I was at shops in last year too as well. I do this annual trip where I hit the road for 5 weeks, which I'm planning right now. But the bottom line is, we need to understand that, where are we with service information? Understand, and in this case, we need to understand where we're going here. I'm saying understand a whole bunch of times, man. Anyways, let's get started before I lose myself here. I'm repeating words. Sorry. Yeah, the topic of the day is use of service information. What needs to be known? How to fix it? You know. And in this case, when I visit shops, and like I was saying earlier, when I go to shops and I work with them, because as I'm a hands-on kind of person too as well. I don't just teach it. I kind of like not only talk the talk, but I walk it. And in this case, when we deal with stuff and when I work with stuff, who's going to be your go-to service information? And if you say Google, I'm going to kill you. Let's Google it, right? GTS and Google that. But anyways, the bottom line is we need to have good understanding of service information. And let me tell you, last year and this year, it was just amazing how many technicians out there were not using the full, capacity or the capability of your service information provider. What's out there for you. And there's even more. There's databases now. You got many companies that are giving you databases that will help you possibly try to repair that, that component or that vehicle, whatever it is. So in this case, when I deal with new diesels and I get, questions about, hey, Tony, what do I do with this? What do I do with that? And I go to the shop and I see how their diagnostic process is. It's just very aggravating because again, I call it diagnosing from the hip, like shooting from the hip, diagnosing from the hip. And then when you're dealing with other subsystems, let's say you got an ABS problem, you got instrument panel cluster, AC, whatever it might be, transmission, right? In this case, you need to have a good understanding of how to navigate through your service information. And in this case, that's a big problem we're having. So right off the bat, let me tell you, if you're a pro demand user, you're an all data user, you're a Identifix user, those are probably the big three. There are other ones out there, but those are the big three. Please note that they do offer training. So you can actually call them up and they offer you free. Most of the time it's free. And in this case, they'll log into your laptop or computer. And what they'll do is they'll actually give you a class on how to find stuff. You just need to know what you need to know. So in this case, every service manufacturer has every manufacturer and their service information has their own way of doing, which I'm going to show you here. But in this case, you have to use that as your go-to. That's why when I look at today's toolboxes, I'm like you, I go into the Matco truck and I go into Snap-on truck and so on. And it's amazing how it's pretty cool that you see a lot of toolboxes now encompassing USB ports, but also where you have to put your laptop or your computer in there. And in this case, that is very essential because let's get it clear is that your service information is just as important as your quarter-inch drive ratchet, your 10 millimeter socket, your tools. In other words, it is a tool. And in this case, if you don't take advantage of this tool, you're going to be lost. And when I'm teaching classes and I'm at a shop and I see technicians actually trying to repair, or they're doing a repair, let's say they're doing a cab off repair and they're doing heads and injectors and so on. And I'm literally watching them. And the thing is, I don't see a screen, I don't see paperwork, I don't see anything. They're just putting it together. Now, some of you that are working in the light diesel committee, which is where I do work most of my work at, can you agree? Answer me this is, and you're welcome to hit the chat, is how many times have you got into an engine or do some repair in an engine or engine compartment and you see harnesses routed totally different? You see stretched or hurt connectors, broken locks, and so on connectors. You see bolts not totally tight, or sometimes you find stuff loose. I mean, we see that all the time because we don't follow procedures. So agree with me or not, that's up to you if you want to put it on the chat. But in this case, we see that a lot. Now, one of the things I like to brag about when I had my great Mitch, the technician working for me, and we were running full tilt boogie in the shop. And what I mean by that, we were moving engines left and right. And I would say in a span of 2 years, 2.5 years, I'm guessing here, but in a span of 2 years, I would say we probably did a good 50 to 60, maybe 70 engines. I mean, I can't tell you, but we did a lot of engines. What I mean by that is we did 6.0, 6.4s, we did Cummins 5.9, 6.7s, we did them all. And in this case, one thing I would always love about when Mitch was starting to put engines together, and I did it sometimes because, I was running the shop, but in this case, I was watching Mitch and the way I trained him was pretty cool because he had that screen right next to him. We had a big, monitor with the computer hooked up to it and he could follow the torque procedures and everything he followed it to the T. And I mean, he followed to the T. So one thing I could brag about with Mitch was the fact that asked me how many engine failures we had, and the answer is one. We only had one. Everything was torqued to specification. Everything was put together the way the manufacturers call for. But some of us tend to think we know more than what the manufacturer actually does. Are there some updates or some things you can add and so on? Yes. But in this case, in many cases, the stock engine or the stock vehicle is the one that seems to last the longest, believe it or not. But yes, you can get to me on after treatment, but in this case, there are ways that we've already told you to actually make that after treatment equipped truck last longer. So therefore is knowing how to fix it, how to repair it, I should actually put there too as well. And the reality is every manufacturer has their way of presenting information. I get it. We're going to see that here in a second, like I said already. but there are a variety of methods used to present the information. So you're going to have to get used to it. So when I'm teaching and I'm going to shops, I got to be fluent in all data, in ProDemand, and guess what? Identifix to find stuff, to know where stuff is at. And sometimes I'll admit to you, it's not easy, but if you use it on a day-to-day basis and you work with it, even on your own free time, you'd be surprised how fast you're going to get. And I've seen it. I see guys that are really, experts at what they're doing. I'm proud of them. They're doing a great job and they follow manufacturer specifications. So therefore, where do you start, right? So as you got to understand, I come from old school. See this gray hair? I come from old school, and I came from the days of those Mitchell manuals, as you can see on the slide right there. Some of you might be laughing, but in this case, I remember, and I regret selling my Mitchell books that I had from years ago, because those of you young whippersnappers, let me tell you, this was our main service manual, especially in the after treatment, and not after treatment, um, not the dealerships, in other words, independent shops. And in this case, even when I first started with 6.0, I still, somewhere in my boxes, I still got my PC Ed manual because I had to learn the 6 liter. And in this case, it was a great tool. Boy, did we use that manual. I even bought a whole bunch and I used them in my first 6 liter classes. So therefore, it helped with in training. It helped also to have guys know where the information at. And then they started coming out in CD, and eventually the internet was developed with all the service information access, right? So therefore, access to service information is just as important as your tools. And there are shops that I've heard of. Luckily, I haven't seen anymore in quite a while, but there are a few shops out there that do not want to purchase the subscriptions for this service information. And when you look at General Motors from my time, it was amazing how we had 3 manuals. You had the wiring diagrams, and you had the powertrain manual, you had transmission manual, you had different manuals. And that was like a cost of $400 somewhere around at that time. That was a lot of money. So therefore, we were trying to buy manuals at that time that would cover an array of years so we can use it in many year vehicles. But in this case, there is a lot of accumulated data and databases, like I said, to help you now diagnose. So again, there is amazing. So when I get into the service information and I'm looking for stuff and I see the stuff in there, to me, it's like, wow, we've come a long way. I mean, we have come a long way. So the service manual, please note, it is bumper to bumper. I mean, you got everything from one end to the other end and all the different subsystems. So as we're approaching now, or we are in 2024, it's amazing what is in these vehicles nowadays. I mean, just look at a 22 truck, what is not equipped on the truck. So who's going to be your go-to? Who's going to be your friend, help you out? So therefore it is. So what do you got? Well, you got diagnostic information, DTC code charts, you got your wiring diagrams, schematics, connector and views, component locators, and that's just a small list of what is available. So, we got to take advantage of it. So, but no, there are, like Identifix, for example, they got databases, and in this case, you can type in a code, you can type in, whatever information you're looking for, and sometimes it'll give you a list of databases that have been collected of what has been repaired. Don't get me wrong, I think it's pretty cool, but you got to know how to use it because it can be a crutch. What I mean by that is a lot of shops, a lot of technicians live by Identifix. They'll do a search on the code they got, they'll see what the common fix is, and they'll just do that and fix it that way. Well, that's a shot in the dark because it could fix it, it could not fix it. So the bottom line is you're not diagnosing, you're just looking for an answer, and that's cheating. It is literally cheating. So yeah, when I get into Identifix, that's why I tell you guys, especially new guys that have been working on the trade or you haven't used your service manual as much, is that you need to please understand how to use it. And then I'll call out the Identifix guys out. It's like when you look at that first page right here after you log in a vehicle, you got a lot going on here. I mean, look at this page. Holy crap, you got a lot going on, right? So obviously the middle is estimating. On the right, you can see service manual and service and repair manuals. We got quick hits. Yeah, you got a lot going on here. But in this case, you got to know where that. So after using it for many, many different times, this has been my best friend. Now, I'm not going to tell you Identifix is not paying me any money to show you this. But what I will tell you is that one of the reasons why I like Identifix, some of you have heard this before, is that you're actually logging into their service information. So, when I go into RAM 2500, 3500 trucks, you're going to see this is their listing right. And I'm going to switch back and forth between slides, but when you look at, Ford does their own thing. Here's their table of contents right there. And you're going to see that they have the PC Ed manual, like I just showed you, the book itself. But you got wiring diagrams, and then you got the workshop manual, right? So in this case, workshop manual. And then you go to GM, you're going to see that GM does their service manual set up different again. So you got the service manual, you got your bulletins, preliminary information, and so on. So therefore, they're quite a bit different. But in this case, it all there's because even at the bottom here of Dodge Ram, you're going to see that there is your TSBs and recalls as well. So a lot going on here in terms of, okay, how do I navigate? How do I find stuff? Because for example, when you want wiring diagrams from Ford, it doesn't tell you what's in each wiring diagram. You go to page 1, page 2, page 3, page 4, and so on. It kind of sucks. Well, you're going to find the wiring diagrams in GM, they call them schematics. So in this case, when you look up schematics, you're going to see that it's under diagnostic information and procedures or under engine as a head start where you're going to go in there. So everybody has their own method, but let's not forget something. And I see that the most overlooked item in most shops has been bulletins, right? I mean, you look right here. I just pull up a bulletin here for, I believe this was GM. And in this case, these are all the bulletins that I pulled up for a specific, I think it was a 17 I pulled up. But in this case, what I'm just trying to tell you is you better keep an eye on bulletins of what's out there because if there is a defective component, like for example, when the L5P rolled out, there were some issues with the particulate matter sensor. There was a recall on it. So there is a bulletin that actually addresses that. So therefore, you may want to always make a habit when you go into service info is let's try to look up what is out there for technical service bulletins. What do you have out there? So in this case, there are many. I mean, boy, there are many. And like I said already, you do not want to do or kind of drive yourself crazy. I mean, look right here under Duramax diesel hard start, no start. We got P0087, P0088, P0191, P128E, or injection pump replacement. So in this case, there's a bulletin that addressed that. But I just picked one at random here for a 2016 to 18 vehicle. Here is a bulletin example. The technician may observe a P2138 as shown right here. You got accelerator pedal position sensor 1-2 correlation set as current or in history, and this may be caused by water intrusion into the instrument panel to the body harness connector, which carries that APP sensor signals to the ECM PCM and results in a voltage difference between APP 1 and 2. So I guess what I'm trying to show you is, you got another bulletin that could be addressed causing this code. So if I do have a P2138, yeah, I want to go ahead and look it up and see if this is the issue too as well. So I guess what I'm trying to say is anytime you got a drivability or whatever issue you might have, it could be a clunking sound, it could be a body sound, it could be a noise, whatever it is, please note that, you could have a bulletin addressing the issue, which will actually fix it rather rapidly. So, Mitch, for example, the way I trained him once again was that, I guess what I'm trying to say is that I can't tell you how many times he came to me in many different diagnostic scenarios and he said, hey, there's a bulletin on this, or there's an update reflash for this, oh, there's a new part for this, or this, all thank you to a technical service bulletin that was available. So please take a look at those bulletins. And if service bulletins have been successful for you, hey, it's going to help you there. So therefore, definitely want to look at that. So let me go ahead and switch over and let me go live to my service information. Again, if you got any questions or comments, I'll try not to answer you. No, I'm kidding. Of course, I'm going to answer you. All right. So I should be here live on my service information here. I'm using the RAM. And just to show you what's available here, I've tried to, by use, a lot of it is coming to me fast, but sometimes when I take a break from RAM and I'm doing a lot of Fords, or then I do a lot of GMs, because I get a lot of L5P calls too as well. It's amazing what you got up here for service information. For example, there's the vehicle quick reference off of RAM. And in this case, there's your capacities, your recommended fluid types. Many guys try to look that up. Some of the service providers provide a quick link for that. Some of them don't. But in this case, your relay locations and types, that's what you're looking at there. Hoisting. Oh my God, I can't tell you how many shops I've been to that these shops don't know how to lift a vehicle properly. I'm like, whoa. I mean, you see the thing rocking on the 2-post lift. That is not good to see. Jump starting, maintenance schedules, and so on. And believe it or not, if you deal with a lot of insurance companies, yeah, they're going to want to know what the maintenance schedule, and I've used that to actually gain leverage, especially if they want to deny a warranty when we have done the maintenance themselves too as well. So please note, to any entity, whether being an insurance or not, or warranty company, this is gold because this is what the manufacturer dictates. This is what we're going to follow for the most part. Okay. Oil changes is going to be the exception. But in this case, what I'm just trying to say is, you got all your general information right there. So as I scroll down, there's brakes, clutch, cooling, electrical, and so on. But I'm going to go towards the bottom here. And what I like about RAM that you may or may not have noticed from them on their service information, which by the way, you can actually access through techauthority.com. Techauthority.com is their website. Haven't been there in a while because I've been using Identifix. But in this case, you got DTC-based diagnostics and you got DTC-based diagnostics for PCM, which is the 6.7 diesel. Yeah, that'll be one I'd be looking at. But then I'm also going to see transmission right here. So therefore, that is for the 60-yard RFE transmission. And then you got your non-DTC based diagnostics, right? So it's kind of funny how they have it all just towards the bottom. That's where they put it. So when I'm trying to teach guys about testing and diagnosing, let's just click right here. And again, people ask me, Tony, where do you get material? How do you keep updated? Well, let me give you the example right here. After treatment inspection guideline. Here's the 6.7 Ram Cummins truck, 2535 and some 4500 trucks. You're going to see the cab chassis truck. Again, there you're going to see the cab chassis. So there's your information about their after treatment. Obviously, this is not an after treatment class. I'm not going to get into this, but what I'm trying to show you what's available here. And boy, do I love whoever wrote this knows a little bit what's going on with after treatment because they're going to tell you this service document provides visual inspection guidelines for the after treatment system used on these 6.7 Ram vehicles. This includes both the pickup and the cab chassis, again from 2013 and present to 2010 and present on 45 and 5500. So they're going to give you some tips on inspecting the DPF, and they even give you some pretty pictures right here. So remove the DPF from the vehicle, inspect the inlet. Well, I don't remove it. I just uncork like I've been teaching in the past. And then they're going to tell you about the carbon wall. We call this the carbon wall. And in this case, you're trying to figure out what's going on and you're inspecting because if you have a lack of power problem or you've got no regeneration taking place and you got a whole bunch of regen codes related to the DPF, sometimes a lot of guys don't check the inlet of the DPF. So they give you a good and bad example of it here. And obviously they're going to tell you of the melting of those cells or the actual substrate material actually getting hurt or cracking as they're showing you right here. Now, obviously, I'm not going to go to every detail, but I'm just showing you what they have put out there for after treatment inspection guidelines. So in this case, one of them is the DPF, and then they tell you to get into the DOC. So there's your DOC right there as well. And then finally, inspection of the SCR catalyst. And if you've been working with SCR, you know the reductant injector with the crystallization issues and so on. There you can see the deposit can be formed because unfortunately, when dead fluid dries, it actually crystallizes right there. So again, all this nice information read that give you some information on understanding how to inspect the SCR because guys say, where is that in the service information, Tony? And it's all located right here. I've actually seen some shops actually take some of these images, print them on a color printer, and actually post them in the locker room or where the guys might actually do their dressing of their uniforms, put on their uniforms, so they can have constant information on what to look for in whether SCR, whether common rail, whether turbos, whatever it is. But you got a lot of images now that these manufacturers are now providing you. So in this case, there you could see that. So again, all about your after treatment system, what's available from RAM. So in this case, you're looking for deposits, you're looking for carbon accumulation and other issues that could be accumulated because the constant messages that I see on either um, our my website is we see a lot of information of a lot of guys saying, hey, we just did this DPF, we just did this SCR a year ago, and so on. We need to replace it or have it cleaned again. Well, that's what you should have checked at the beginning because what took out that DOC, that SCR, and that DPF. So that's what you're looking at here. So again, nice information here for you guys to look at. I cannot stress again the need for researching and looking at because I'm only going to hit just a portion of what's available in your service information. I mean, here's another one. And for those of you that are shop managers, shop owners, and you're looking for something to give your techs to follow, here's their misfire runs rough performance test from RAM themselves, right? So if you're working on the 6.7, they're going to tell you, are there any codes present in the PCM, TCM, or ABS modules? Repair those DTCs before proceeding. So therefore, if you do have an issue, follow the codes because, yeah, it could lead you to what the problem could be, what's causing it, right? And then, like I've been talking about diagnostics, your visual inspection, verify there are no external fuel or coolant leaks, verify engine oil level, excuse me, battery voltage, and so on. All the basics you're supposed to be looking at right here. And then you're going to look at any problems with the above conditions, check parasitic losses. And boy, when I was at a shop last month, we had a truck that were diagnosing parasitic loss issue, and turns out the whole issue was bad grounds. Go figure on that one, right? But in this case, yeah, you want to check your charging system, and it's amazing. That's why I've been pushing the electrical thing, is because I can't tell you how many guys still don't know how to properly diagnose a charging system. I was at a shop last week here in Las Vegas where they replaced 3 alternators or generators, and they still can't figure out the problem. It's like you haven't diagnosed the circuits of that connector going to it, right? And they don't know how it works, and that's kind of a frustrating thing. But again, where did I learn it at? There is a section here for charging, but let me stick to the misfire here. We have checking fuel quality, contamination, check crankcase filter, perform the system run-up test. Yes, the software from RAM using their WI Tech program is asking you to go ahead and run a run-up test on those 2012 and later vehicles. Again, it'll cut out each individual fuel injector 3 times and calculate the delta RPM change. So it does it for you. So therefore, and then it tells you that 2201 will set while this test is running can be disregarded. So that's normal to see. So in this case, you're checking fuel injector and valve cover harness terminals. You can have a loose connection. Make sure they're torqued at 13 pounds, right? And how many of you do torque them? No, my hand does the job. But anyways, checking valve lash. Oh my God, I was happy to see that one because I can't tell you how many Cummins and Duramax applications we see that they actually need valve lash adjustment for misfire or running rough. Believe it or not, they come here clacking away. So therefore, then finally, you got compression check and cylinder leakage test as well, along with the injectors. So therefore, it kind of gives you a handle on what to follow. So again, this is the manufacturer providing you this information. So it is my hope you understand that you do have some kind of guideline to follow when you're using service information. I mean, look, number 13 right here. Check engine pressure sensors. We've talked about in the past about checking the barometric pressure sensor and see if it correlates correctly with the map sensor. Heck, is it reading the correct atmospheric pressure, right? So therefore, want to verify the inlet and intake air system, which this should have been towards the top. But in this case, they're asking you to even check the RAM air box. Some of you guys know on the bottom of the air filter housing, there's a little doors right there that open and close. So again, a lot of good information, inspecting the turbo for wheel clearance and so on. So when I go through this list and I'm looking at this, it was kind of like already what we already have been doing in our diagnostics to diagnose the vehicle. And remember, when you're doing a diagnostics, let me just throw my 2 cents worth there is, please note that you're also ensuring that there's nothing else wrong with the vehicle. Because a lot of guys say, well, that's what they told me to fix. This is what I'm fixing. Yeah, but you're looking for other work, legitimate work that the truck may need. So the list goes on, and then it tells you how to check fuel contamination, testing procedure, how to make sure you're going to have good fuel. That is their way of testing it right there. So in this case, you're taking a sample of the fuel, and it takes you step by step along with color pictures. So if you're a picture guy, there you go. So in this case, you're going to check the quality of fuel. And guys, like I've said before, I challenge you to check the fuel in your area because of the fact that we take samples of fuel here every so often. I haven't done it in a while, but in this case, we actually find some issues with fuel too as well. So fuel is not a constant here, unfortunately. Depending what region of the country you're at, fuel is never a constant. So therefore, we also have to test that too as well. So that's a quick look on what's available for drivability from RAM. But then we finally get into the engine itself. And in this case, if you got a new guy, you want him to learn a little bit about this, there's a description. It's short and sweet to the point, but at least you know the firing order, 153624. Other other models, you're going to find that they actually tell you which is group 1 and group 2, meaning that on the 5.9s, group 1 is 1, 2, and 3, while on the 6, group 1 is 1, 2, and 3, 4, 5, and 6 is group 2, and they're all connected in parallel, and that would be outlined in the 5.9 service information. But then you get into diagnosing and testing, and there is your cylinder compression test, right? So therefore, it's telling you how to actually do the compression test, and it even gives you a minimum compression pressure at sea level, that is, and that is 350 psi that you're going to see there. So many guys will negotiate and come up with their own magic number, but 350 has always been a good number to actually follow when you're working on these applications. So I know one thing we're going to be talking about later on in the future in my diagnostic webinars is going to be getting into doing pulse testing and so on. But in this case, if you suspect you got a dead hole, because hey, it is amazing how many guys will diagnose problems, they'll go test drive the problem, and you got a cylinder cutting out, it misses, and it's like, really, you couldn't find that with the cylinder kill test? So there you go. So in this case, the list goes on and on for other issues related to the engine itself. So again, everything available to you there. Now, when you go into electrical, obviously you're going to see you got all the different subsystems there, from something as basic as your ignition control, right? So in this case, this is actually related to gasoline, so we're going to ignore that. That's ignition control. But then you got instrument panel cluster issues. So in this case, diagnosing and testing. And if you know your instrument panel clusters on these RAM applications, you're going to see that there is a lot of CAN network going on between them. So in this case, you're going to even see some messages about the use of CAN being used here. Then you do the self-test that it actually does for itself. But again, it'll help you understand what you're working at, because sometimes I need to know, hey, what is this thing about? How's it work? So I need to do some search and understanding it. And the thing is, even the vehicle theft, there's your description right there. There's your mobilizer system. Again, you can read up on that. So this is all what you're looking at is OE service information here. So in this case, it doesn't get any more OE than what you're looking at right there. It's like if I'm logged into their website. So in this case, there's your key transponder and description and operation and so on. So again, that's one of the things you want to learn. So it doesn't take a long time. I've done these demonstrations in my classes where I will read this, and it'll take maybe 5 minutes to 10 minutes, So it's 5 minutes and 10 minutes of your time to invest, maybe less, for you to understand what it is. For example, I've asked guys, what is SKIS? What is RKE? What is the PEKG, right? So in this case, it's all right here in the service information to give you under description and operation. So please, you got to be using this information so you can fix these issues that can arise. Now, since a lot of us are drivability technicians, there is your fuel system, there's your description. So in this case, this is a common rail Bosch system that we see here, and you're going to see the description of it, right? So in this case, I'll outline for you, telling you how it works and also the pressures that we're dealing with. So the pressures, like it says on the last line, is 2,900 to 26,107 on this model. That's all the pressures that we're seeing. But again, it's telling you about the gear pump, pretty much the whole common rail system, which I'm not going to get into with you, but it's all outlined there. And then you got your dedicated, components there. And it's funny because if I were to pull up a 2008, a lot of guys still don't understand that on the installation. This one, I believe it doesn't apply to, because this one has oh no, it does. In this case, you're going to find out there is a phasing of this injection pump. Some of you may have not known it. Those are the ones equipped with the CP3 pump. And in this case, you're going to see that, they actually have a phasing. So you're supposed to put the engine at top dead center. You're going to put the number 5 on the shaft at 9 o'clock position. So there is a phasing of this. So this is all outlined. So I asked guys to raise their hands in class, like, how many guys done pumps on a 6.7 Cummins, and they raised it with the CP3 pump? And I said, all right, did you know that the pump is phased in? And only a handful know it. That means they did not follow the service installation procedure for this pump and how that actually goes in. Not to mention the torquing of those bolts. I know what you're saying. Hey, I've been torquing them my way. It's been working. Well, there's a right way and a wrong way. Everything has a torque specification for the most part, right? And here you could see those torque specifications right there, right? So in this case, know that. I go follow those procedures on installation. So when we used to have new technician, even my current apprentice that's working with me, Beto, Beto, he pulls up the service information. He's installing a pump, he's installing an intake, everything. Boom, 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 gets torqued. So yeah, R3/8, snap-on torque wrench is getting worn down, but we use it all the time. So again, all this information available to you. So there you go. So in a nutshell, what I'm trying to get to, guys, is that you have to take advantage of what's available for you. It's a lot of good information, a lot of good stuff so far. So let me do a new vehicle search though. As we're talking about this, the next target is going to be Ford. Ford is my favorite, and I know I thought about it. I go, why is Ford my favorite? Well, I think it's my favorite because I use it a lot. I do use it a lot because the majority of our work has been Fords. But once again, I'm over here and I got service manuals right here. And again, you got your table of contents for the 2017 diesel Super Duty. And in this case, this is the PC Ed manual. So let me hit on the PC Ed. I believe I have, yeah, here we go, the PC Ed. And there's your sections right there. Description and operation. Ford does like their way of doing it, but there's their description and operation of all these different subsystems that relate to powertrain. So PCED stands for Powertrain Control Emission Diagnostic Manual. And in this case, you're going to see your monitors. Those of you that have to deal with monitors, like in Denver or in other states or California, you have to learn about monitors themselves. And then you got your EC system, engine control components, your EGR. Let me just click on EGR for explanational purposes. Here explains the EGR system. Now, those of you that don't know what I'm talking about with monitors, I can tell you, we've had some phone calls, or I've had some phone calls of guys calling me, I can't get these monitors to run. It won't pass emissions. So you're going to have to read up a little bit on the service information itself. So again, there's your description of the EGR and how it works, right? Now, obviously, please note that if you do have a code set, you actually can relate or read off the code too, which I'll get into here in a little bit. But there is information about your monitor. So this is all under monitor status for those of you who have to deal with monitors. Please note, you got EGR closed loop limits system monitor, cooler system monitor. For the transit vans, you got this information right here. And then all others, you got this to category to go here. So please, because I understand you're not only going to work on Super Duties, you also got other models that are explained here that are categorized under the 450, 550 truck. So, but again, all that is available for monitors because people often ask me, where do I find information on how these systems work, especially when it comes to monitors? Well, you're going to find it right here. And then you got a generalized OBD2 monitor information right there. And in this case, you're going to read up on what's required and what's not required for monitors, mostly in those states that actually have the same thing as carb regulation. So, but anyways, we got other monitors detected there, and then we got our thermostat monitor, turbocharger, and so on. So again, you got a whole bunch of different information under description operation. Then you got diagnostic methods, right? Here's the general information about when clearing codes, you are resetting the monitors. That's not a good thing sometimes, but you got to get rid of code. And then there are diagnostic methods. There's an overview. It's pretty general. Actually, I don't even use this anymore. They used to have a whole bunch of things, but I don't know why they have that still there because it hardly has anything. But there's my favorite, drive cycles, right? So in this case, when I click on drive cycles, you're going to see drive cycle procedure, but then exhaust fluid system fault procedure. So lately I've been getting a few phone calls about, I'm trying to get rid of, the D-rate message, even though I don't have no check engine light. Well, in some cases, you're going to have to look up the drive cycle procedures. Here's a Ford Transit, right? So in this case, you're going to see that. Then all others, there's your drive cycle right there, what you need to do. So in this case, that will help meet the conditions to actually get rid of that D-rate condition, especially this is when you have no codes and you got the light on. So therefore, these are outlined and shown here for drive cycles, but it wasn't the only one. The other one right here is, again, exhaust fluid system fault procedure. Again, this is a long drawn out thing that you have to start with a cold motor, not too cold either. But again, you got to do all these different steps to get rid of that message. Now, those of you who don't know and haven't worked on Fords, this is like your catalyst efficiency test or your reductant fluid quality test or your anti-tamper test you find on GM to actually test for NOx. But again, this is all outlined in drive cycles. But again, you're going to see an overview of this, and then you're going to see your SCR system procedure for transit vans and all others too as well. Again, trying to reset them and run the drive cycle. So that's where you're going to find them first. So you got to know where to find them. Obviously, if you run yourself into a problem, contact me and I'll help you tell you where they're at. But in this case, what I'm actually putting together now is I get so many phone calls about guys telling me, how do I reset? How do I get rid of this message? How do I take it out of D-rate? Well, I'm trying to compile them all together on whether you run a drive cycle, whether or not you can run a regeneration or not, whatever it might be. So yeah, I'm trying to put that together because I get a lot of phone calls about that. So there you go. So, anyways, freeze frame data. There's information about freeze frame data, what's available. A lot of guys don't use freeze frame. I'll be honest with you, I don't use it as much, but I've seen some of them get a little better, help me diagnose what's going on when the code's set. For those of you who don't know what freeze frame is. So in this case, we see even more output state control ASC, so you can read up about that. So that's part of your self-diagnostics that I like to run. So again, everything there and how to set up your scan tool and so on. Do your power balance test. Amen, brother. I love to do the power balance test. So in this case, that's very important to do. Okay. Now, lately, I've been playing with some new scan tools, and it's nice to see that even a lot of the small handhelds are now giving you the ability to kill cylinders, not view a graph, but at least you can kill cylinders. But someone will prepare a graph for you. So scan tools are really coming around on a lot of things that they're actually doing. So anyways, that's all about your diagnostic information and drive cycles that you can see there. So finally, there's reference values. And when we talk about reference values, please note how many times have we seen, typical category signal charts that you're going to see there. I mean, all part of your diagnostics to know PIDs. I mean, Jesus, the list is long. And then there's your reference symptom chart. Again, what category goes to, you got to follow it. Typical reference values, right? So in this case, that would be under reference to parameter ID information. Because how many times have you looked at an acronym on a scan tool and you don't know what it means? Now, if you're using IDS, the old IDS, it did actually give you what it meant, but on some of the new ones, it doesn't give it to you. So if you're looking for a list of where those at, and I see this printed on many different toolboxes from shops that I've been to, so they can start memorizing from time to time what those PIDs are, what those acronyms mean. And that's pretty interesting to see. Unfortunately, due to time, there's so much I can show you, but in this case, I still got to get the GM. But please note, there is a lot of good information for you guys, and you guys have to play with it, whether it being all data, whether it being pro demand, you got to see where their information is at. Go step further and play with it. So next time you go on your lunch hour and you play on your computer and you watch YouTubes, why not just play with the service information to see what you find, you know? So when we talk about wiring, since we're talking about a 6.7 diesel, like I told you, they don't tell you what's in each page, and this is what sucks about them. And I don't like it. But you got to find which component is in which. So here I could see page one, and this is power distribution because pretty much most of the time the first page is always power distribution. There we can see power distribution. Now, if you haven't played with, and this is where you guys that have the pasted information on your service provider, you're going to find out that those links actually do work when it comes to Ford. So I don't know if this one's going to work. Actually, do I have it in name? I think I had it disabled because I had a problem earlier, but these links should be working. And in this case, it'll give you connector and if you and in connector and information. It'll give you splice location and so on. So you just got to play with it. But I believe this one's not working right now. I'm having browser issues with Chrome. I'm using Chrome right now. It works in Microsoft Edge. So therefore, actually, no, I'm using Edge. I should be working. Never mind, I'm using Edge right now. I thought I was using Microsoft Chrome. But in this case, yeah, for some odd reason, I'm going to have to reboot here to see why it's not. I've had PC, before I logged in, I had PC problems here. So that could be part of it there. But anyways, there you could see other wiring diagrams. And boy, do we love Ford because of the fact that everything's colored. You're going to see some general information about it. Again, identification of terminals and so on. So therefore, there is a lot going on here. And I got a webinar coming up where I'm going to spend one big webinar on wiring diagrams and how we actually interpret them. So yeah, so therefore know what's available there from wiring diagrams. So you got a lot of information. But as we're dealing more with CAN issues and communication issues, and we see networks shutting down, it's you got to have a need to know that wiring diagram. I mean, this is a 2017 truck, if I'm not mistaken. And the whole diagram from 2013 has changed. I mean, here you can see the data link connector, which is a 16 terminals. And here's your high-speed CAN terminals, and you're going to see that we got 3, 11, and the traditional 6 and 14. But now we're going to see the expansion now with 3 and 11. But then we're going to see that that's within the gateway module. So we're going to have the gateway module. And that gateway module is going to just take off. Take a look at all the different networks that you're just taking off. All these represent the continuation of another network. So I just hit one on the link, and you're going to see the continuation of that network where it goes to. By the way, that link worked right there. See that? So in this case, it's like, okay, that goes to the trailer camera, trailer TPMS connector, all on that gateway module. So I'm like, wow, we got this gateway module, so I'm going to have to read up on how this gateway module works. Because you'll notice separately, you're going to see the body control module sitting all here, which provides the power. So the BCM now houses fuses here going to the gateway module that powers it up, right? And even to the pin 16. So that's something new that we see on these trucks. So again, when I play with these wiring diagrams, it gives me a better idea of what's new and what they're using there. Let me go to page 2 here, right? And what you're going to find here is the continuation of other CAN network. Let's see which one it pulls up, because remember, I don't know what's in here. And then you're going to see, let's see, we have the continuation of a very much a network right here. I'm trying to find where it goes to. Transmission control module, backtrack over to a splice block. And then before that, it goes to 1411, which is probably back to that gateway module there. So there's your sync module, your APIM. I mean, you got a whole bunch of generic module, your GFM module, your battery energy control module. And this kind of sets the stage of why we want you to learn networks and learn electrical, because this is a portion of what's in this truck nowadays. So not fun. Make sense? So, and there you can see, there's your PCM right there. And by the way, as I'm showing you this, you're going to find that the terminating resistor seems to be non-existent from some of this new stuff. Only on local networks that I'm finding it now. You'll notice this is straight going to the splice block. And from the splice block, that goes straight up back to the diagnostic link connector. So that's changing, guys. I mean, so get up speed on electrical. That's why I say that, So don't think I'm trying to toot the same horn over and over again, because I'm not. So anyways, that's a brief overview of that. So therefore, that is your PC Ed manual. So let's close this guy up. And again, that's all in the PC Ed manual. But let me go back to the Super Duty truck. So in this case, under the workshop manual here, that we're going to find powertrain, and we're going to see engine. And under engine, we're going to see a lot of subcategories right here, from emission control for gasoline, and then you have engine cooling. Let me just click on engine cooling. We still get guys that are not fluent on 6.7, have not taken a 6.7 class, and they don't even know that there's two cooling systems. Yes, I've been to shops where they say, hey, Tony, good thing you're here. We're trying to pressure test, but we can't get no pressure. And they don't realize there's two degas bottles, two water pumps, two cooling systems, right? So in this case, there is your general information on your cooling. There's your diagrams, your components, what each one is. I mean, look at this. They don't get any better than this, guys. So again, it's a sin if you don't read up on what's available there. And system operation and components, right? So there is your information there. And there's even information. The thermostat monitor is a function of PCM and is designed to verify correct thermostat operation. This monitor executes once per drive cycle and has a monitor run duration of 300-800 seconds. If there's a malfunction, PO125, PO128 sets. And then there's information about the component system operation, all about reading, right? All about reading there. So that's just cooling system operation, guys. And that's what you're looking at there. And the list goes on and on for other subsystems, such as your intake, description, and operation. So you see how there's a description operation, tell you a little bit about what's going on there, right? And obviously there's going to be a diagnostic portion of that too as well. Fuel system as well, from the fuel tank all the way to the common rail system. You're going to see that information there. But let me go to engine. Under engine, first of all, the fuel and charging controls. And in this case, removal and installation, the fuel injection pump, for example, right? Guys are doing a fuel injection pump. And even to the day, even guys were asking me about checking the play, but also timing the pump correctly or phasing the pump correctly. And that's all shown there from Ford Service, because I can't tell you how many shops I've been to. They're doing 6-7 pumps and they're not phasing it in. They've gotten lucky because it's a harmonic thing. I know, I get it. But in this case, they don't even know, about the torquing of the bolts and so on and removing. So again, nice, pretty pictures to help you, again, service this vehicle. So you can see Ford has done a hellacious good job to actually help you, you know how to do it. I mean, look at this. It's nice stuff there. Hopefully, I'm not scrolling too fast for you. And if I am, let me know in the chat there. So, make sense? Let me know any comments if you got any comments. Hopefully, I haven't lost you. But guys, all this information that's available here is pretty cool. Now, again, let me go to new vehicle right now. So, last but not least that I'm going to talk about is GM. Now, GM has done a lot of changes from the early stuff to the later stuff. So in this case, let me pick, let's see, I should have some saved here. I got older GMs, but I still get a lot of phone calls about. There's a 2015 right here, LML. So here we see a 2015, right? Again, this is the start page from them. But in this case, when I look at their service manual here I look at the service manual, I click on more, and here you can see all the categories for GM like I showed you earlier. Please note there's your four-wheel drive bulletins. Your technical bulletins is what you're going after, by the way. You want the technical ones, not updates on the software, because this is GM, so it relates to dealerships too as well. But in this case, under engine and propulsion, it's going to move me over here. And in this case, I'm going to select 6.6, which is, again, L5P LML, description and operation. And there's your description operation. We have worksheets that we do in the L5P class where we look up this service information. And in this case is, DEF fluid warning strategy. What is that all about? I don't understand what that. There's warning level 1, warning level 3. A lot of you guys have done your homework, and those guys have taken my class. I'm so proud of them because they even tell me what warning level am I at, or what warning level am I at, to understand what's going on right here. So, that service exhaust fluid system message is now driving a few people crazy. But in this case, it tells you what's going on with warning levels. So there you go. All that information there under description and operation. And since we were talking about after treatment earlier with RAM, there you can see their version of it, explaining the after treatment themselves there. Again, the components that you're going to be having. And let me tell you why that's important, because I didn't show you that in the RAM, because the RAM uses an ammonia slip catalyst, while GM and Ford don't. So they have an ammonia sensor. So there's a description about that on how that works. General Motors has a dedicated hydrocarbon injector known as the ninth injector, right? On these L5Ps and LMLs. So you're going to see that right here. So again, a lot of information. Then there's a turbocharging system. Again, what's encompassing, how it basically works. And again, all the components right there. It's pretty cut and dry on these turbos, but that's what you're looking at there. So, and let me tell you, I've had guys attend my diesel master course, and one stood out, and this guy was amazing. He knew a lot of that stuff to the point I was saying, dude, you shouldn't be in this class. This is not up. You shouldn't, he says, no, Tony, you're actually filling the holes. But then my question was, how do you know so much about these systems? He says, it's in the service manual. And boy, is he right. A lot of this stuff is in the service manual, which we rehearse too, as I'm showing you right here. So, all right. So that's description and operation of different components. And then you got repair instructions, which is very, very important because, again, we want to follow procedures on how to put these things back together. Remember what I said about Mitch, that our failures were minimal because of the simple fact that we torque everything, we checked everything per, what they were asking us for to do. For example, about IQA programming, right? Here's some instructions about before programming a control module, verifications and so on. So there's procedures for that too as well. Some of you may know that when you're programming a module, you should be using a battery tender, right? So in this case, battery tender maintains your voltage at a constant in case it takes a while and you don't want to kill the battery, have the voltage drop while you're doing the programming. So, and then something as simple as your pressure relief valve right here, there's your description again on how to tighten it and what you tighten it to. So be aware of that. So every single component for the most part has a service procedure on how to install it. Heck, even something as simple as your whiff sensor off your fuel filter housing, right? So there it is. So in this case, we got to install them correctly there. Again, it all depends what level you're at. Some of you guys might not be, high level. Some of you guys might be low level, and that's okay. But in this case, what I'm trying to say is what's available for you. What's the classic one I teach that I see a lot of drivability problems is turbocharger learn, especially on pretty much LLY and on, right? Do we actually look at that, to see if it's actually learned? Let's take a look at that on their scan tool, right? So in this case, it tells you what is actually being looked at during a turbocharger learn procedure, right? Which is automatic on most of them. And then finally, after all that, we get the schematic and routing diagrams. Yes, General Motors calls them schematics, and you're going to see a vast difference between Ford and GM because all their stuff is black and white, right? So in this case, it's all black and white, as you can see there. So again, we can go ahead and zoom it up again by playing with the zoom button, but it shifts. What I don't like on this one is that it shifts over. But in this case, you're going to see the wiring diagrams have changed with GM dramatically, and we have to learn new symbols. And there is description operation of these schematics, how to read them. But in this case, you're going to see a big difference, kind of big difference from Ford, ain't it? So in this case, there's your ground location. And by the way, what you're looking at is power distribution going to the ECM. So like I said, for the most part, most wiring diagrams are going to show you schematics. The first one is always the power ground distribution that you're going to see there. So a lot going on right there. So again, a lot of diagrams, a lot of information there. But what about mechanical ways, And when we're talking about repair instructions, yeah, we need how to do repairs, such as engine cylinder head installation, right? So therefore, I take it you all know about the various different head gaskets that are available because there's different thicknesses. So therefore, you're literally shimming the head in. And in this case, here's your grade A, grade C, how to tell the difference between it. So when I get shops, because you got to understand, I go to shops that are hole in the wall shops, and I'll be honest with you, I wouldn't take my truck to them, but I'm trying to train them. And in this case, it's like they will do head gaskets and they'll do the specs not knowing that there's different grades. And they're like, what are you talking about? Even to the day. I mean, this has been around for years. And in this case, a lot of guys don't follow the procedures for torquing the heads down correctly. And there's your steps for torquing heads, right? And by the way, let's get something clear. Can a truck run properly with stock bolts? Yes. I know everybody wants to put studs, but hey, guess what? It can run with bolts too, as long as you don't do stupid stuff with it, right? So again, the list goes on and on for different component repair and testing that you can see right here. So here we can see fuel injector cleaning and inspection right there. So in this case, about the lines, about the injectors, what you want to look for. Actually, it ain't much for cleaning, to be honest with you. But in this case, you got to reseal it if reinstalling, right? So there's that information there. So again, other information as crankcase ventilation, oil separator removal. Again, all there. So all these procedures are at. So when people ask me, where do you find all this information? Well, my main player is if I'm dealing with a new vehicle, yeah, I'm gonna first look at the service information. So let me do a new vehicle here. A good example is, let's say I'm working on what is it, a 22, let's see if I can get a 2020. I'm going to pick a Chevrolet Silverado, and I'm trying to get the 3-liter here. Hopefully you can all hear me okay. 1500. I should pick an LTZ. Silverado LTZ. And in this case, we want the 3-liter diesel right there. Okay. Now, I haven't done much 3-liter work in a while. I was doing a few of them, but I haven't done any big work. They're all still under warranty. So here's my information about this. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to look up information for what's been going on with the engine. So there's engine and propulsion right there. And in this case, on engine and propulsion, I'm going to select engine controls for the 3-liters. This is the LM2 LZO motor. So in this case, what's been going on with the exhaust after treatment, right? That I've heard there were some updates. So therefore, here we can see a layout of the system itself. Obviously, I can blow this up to take a look at it, right? So here we can see our pretty much all our components. A lot of people don't realize. They're like, Tony, how'd you know there was actually an exhaust plate there? There's an exhaust plate. Look at number 11. That is an exhaust plate you're seeing right there, right? So in this case, they're showing you all the different components right here. So obviously there is a table of contents showing me who's who, who's what. But in this case, there's your injectors, right? And in this case, that's got to be my DEF fluid injector because we understand that, as you can see here in this big housing, that this is what we call an SCR on F. And SCR on F means that it's got the SCR and the diesel particulate filter all in one assembly. So in this case, that's what we see right here. So again, that is your SCR. So obviously we have to have a DOC, we got our DPF, and then we got our SCR assembly right there. So again, that's what's being injected there. So anyways, it's a whole new system. It's something that we haven't seen, for some of you might have not seen before, but some of you might have seen it already. So in this case, I read up on the current issues going on, fuel system description. Okay, I don't know the system per se. So therefore, again, how is the system laid out? And if you've done an inject these Denso pumps yet, let me tell you, are they a lot of fun? You're going to find out this truck, you're going to be better off doing a lot of cab off, right? But in this case, there is your common rail system laid out, all the components there, your filter housing and so on, all the different components. So in this case, it's all outlined there under fuel system description. So in this case, we'll see that right there. Let me close this out. So again, a lot of good information. Glow plugs, same thing. You could read up about the glow plugs, how they work. And by the way, if you haven't seen what's going on with glow plugs, like we teach on an L5P class, we are reaching within, less than, Jesus, 2.2 seconds, we are reaching 2,192 degrees, right? And the voltages we maintain, it's pretty interesting. So no, you don't want to test those glow plugs on the bench with 12 volts. Look at this, 7.2 volts for 2.2, 5.7 volts for 0.8, 5.4 volts to reach finally 2,192 degrees Fahrenheit. So there you go. So as I develop course material, when I develop a class, you're going to use that service information to actually tell you how these things all work. And then comes diagnostic information and procedures. And then you get to your diagnostic trouble codes right here. So when you look at your diagnostic trouble codes, right, this is to me gold. And what I mean by that is always remember that a diagnostic trouble code is a test, and I need to read about what is a test. So in this case, this is a fuel trim system lean, fuel system um, fuel system lean, and what else? Fuel system rich. So in this case, this is under, let's see, is this for a diesel or not? Fuel system rich. This is a type B code. And in this case, the limits to rich seen after running conditions are met. I don't know if this is a gasoline or diesel. It says it's for 2.0 LSQ3. Oh, diesel. Yeah, it is for diesel. So in this case, this is a code. Now, believe it or not, this is the first time I've run across this code. So it's a PO171, PO172. It tells me the conditions for running the code. Why am I telling you this? Because you're going to find out that when you're looking at codes, and I've taught this before in L5P, has been that you need to know when the code is actually being ran. In other words, when the test is being ran. So I'm a big believer in conditions for running it and conditions for setting it. What has to happen for it to test it? Because here's what a lot of guys do. They'll go ahead and erase the codes, they'll go test drive the vehicle, but did you meet those conditions to test for that code that you had a malfunction for? It might require a cold start. It might require it to be warmer than so much. For example, ambient air temperature must be warmer than -4 degrees. I was in Denver and we never got over -4 degrees. I mean, it was under -4, so we did not reach that temperature. It has to have vehicle speed right there. So in this case, it cannot be done just being parked. The code will set has to see some speed changes. So again, these are what it needs to be. So the engine's still cold under 113 degrees. You're going to meet that. So this is data that's available in your codes, and then the conditions for it to run, and it has to be there for greater than 10 seconds. So that's what it is. And if you know what a type B code is, type B code has to actually fail twice in 2 consecutive drive cycles, but 2 consecutive key cycles, I should say. But again, all that information there in your diagnostic trouble codes. And it's rather it agitates me how many guys just skim through this and they're just trying to get to the beef here. Well, it's not always easy. You got to read up on it. Here's some information about the EGR issue on this code, which is the P049E. So I love when I get these phone calls when guys have read the service information and said, hey, I did this, I did that, and did this, and I follow this code, and yeah, it does set right away, it does happen, blah, blah, blah. Okay, now we have to get more involved with it to try to figure out what the problem is. But again, it does not make sense for you to call me up about an issue if you haven't done your homework on what the code is. Time after time, I've seen YouTube videos and stuff where you have all these different codes set and guys are trying to run all these tests of regeneration and so on. Hey, if you got a circuit code, you got a performance code. And the reason why I brought this code up was just to show you for the reductant system under this category, right? All these codes of how there is so much that's monitored by the onboard computer. And that's what you should understand by reading the service information is, hey, look at all these things that he's testing for me. He's doing a lot of your homework. All you got to do is help it a little bit. How can you help it is start wiggling and jiggling wires to see if you have any of these issues, whether it being a high voltage issue, a circuit performance issue, and so on. It's erratic. So therefore read up on it to know what's going on. So there you go. So that's diagnostic trouble codes. And towards the bottom of diagnostic trouble codes, you're going to find from GM some of their symptom charts and also their, diagnostic charts in fuel system diagnosis, for example, here. So in this case, under fuel system diagnosis, you're going to see circuit system verification. They're telling you what you should see for lip pump pressure, which is now you can read them on the scan tool. So in this case, what are you looking for and how much you should find? Right? So yeah, we got some general information there for the fuel system itself. So therefore, that's your lip pump pressure right there. Then you got fuel system diagnosis high pressure side, right? So you got information about this on what's going on the high pressure side, what you are looking for and how to test it, right? So again, you follow these steps. So one of my slides was mentioned, I don't know if you caught it, but one of the slides did say that, have you ever tried to diagnose by the book, right? So look up that information. If you need help, like I said, I'll help you find it. But in this case, look up that information to tell you what everything's supposed to be like. I've had some techs, and we have it at our own shop where we actually printed a lot of this stuff for quick, easy find. Hey, here's your diagnostic information for all the general information for lip pump. This is your return specs. This is your lip pump specs. This is your individual injector specs and so on, right? All in a book that they printed up. So they make these binders. They're working on an LML. They're working on an L5P. They're working on a Farstroke 6.7, whatever it might be. They have it already preset. So don't be afraid to print it or bookmark it. Please note, like on this program, I could bookmark it and save it, but for the most part, yeah, I've been known to actually have a binder ready to go. So there's a 6.7 binder I got already set, and there's a 6.7, Cummins book that I already have done. So I have those available. You know what's funny though? When I hit the road, I forget to take them with me. So I'm like, oops, now I got to pull it up. So that happens. So there you go. All right. So again, more and more information. There's your reductant malfunction service bay test and so on. I mean, you got so much information. Like I said, I cannot stress that enough. And obviously, like I showed you earlier with another GM vehicle, there you could see your wiring diagram. So let me just pick a different one. This is your engine data sensors, but you'll notice that GM does something that Ford doesn't. They'll tell you what's in each schematic wiring diagram, not like Ford giving you page 1 through page 2, whatever, right? So here's their wiring diagram here. So make sense? So in this case, you got all this information there describing pretty much these components that are outlined right there. So a lot going on, but a lot information on where to find it. So now if you're using, I understand, I was trying to get my ProDemand up and running, but I didn't have time. But if you use ProDemand or All Data uses the same format. So you don't have to figure this out, and they give you all the pictures and all this information there. I like to see it from the manufacturer standpoint because again, there is some information. I'm not going to lie to you, there is some information that I find in aftermarket service companies that are not always found in the aftermarket stuff. So the OE tends to rule for me, and that's why I like it. Not to mention, they've already updated. So you're looking at an updated information that you see right there. So definitely does work very well. So like I was saying before, you can get issues. So in this case, you can type in their search all, let me just guess a code because I am shooting this from the hip. I'm just going to pick a code right here. Let's see if this yields something right here. And in this case, you're going to find that this, I've typed in a code and what Identifix does for me, and I believe me, I'm not trying to give you an Identifix. I'm just telling you all the resources that are available to you. And other service manual providers offer similar stuff. So in this case, you're going to see general descriptions under service manual, right? They'll give you to the list. So therefore, then it tells you, what are the specs for different components. Now, this is not a good example, but I'm just giving you the categories of what it's actually giving you, right? Let me try another code. Let me try a rail pressure code. Let's see if that one sets on a 3-liter diesel. Okay. Here you can see the code chart. It quickly leads me to that code. That's why a lot of guys use that search all without having to go into service information, and bang, there's your code right there to diagnose it. So, it's pretty interesting what you can do there. Not to mention, if you had past issues, it would give you probably scenarios of failures that occurred and tell you what fixed it. The classic example I can tell you was years ago. I usually don't do Toyotas or gasolines, and they said, Tony, you got to fix this, and it was running rough. It runs smooth idle, but then it would run rough. And I was going crazy. Nobody could fix this truck, right? And we thought we acquired all the information. And it had a code for timing chain, and I couldn't find where the problem was at unless I had to I was ready to pull off the timing covers and all that to see where the timing chain was at, stretch chain, something like that. Well, the thing is, I typed in the code under this Toyota 3, I believe it was a 3 liter, I forgot what engine it was, 4.7, I don't know what it was. But in this case, I pulled it up, and it was funny. The repair for this code, when I looked at all the database that was there, 3/4 of those were fixed by the timing chain issue. So it's like, wow. So yeah, it kind of validated my guess. So sure enough, pull the covers off, and it was one tooth off. All right. So in this case, that's where it comes handy for me. It's like, okay, what is the most common thing we're seeing wrong here? Because this is where my diagnostics is leading me. But, has this been a common problem? Is it a module or so on? Because let me tell you, when you got issues with subsystems, you saw networks earlier, and you're trying to find out, let me backtrack. Hold on. Forget what I said. In other words, like I've said before, we are seeing more and more network problems, not necessarily caused by wiring. It's caused by modules. And these modules might be exposed to the elements such as water intrusion, and so on. But sometimes it could be wiring, but I'm seeing a lot of them where the module itself. So when you're trying to say, hey, the module's this problem, and you've done all the testing, this module costs like $800 plus, you're going to second guess yourself. And in this case, you're like, is this really the problem? Is if this don't fix it, blah, 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 blah. And then you're going to see the validation. It'll kind of give you a feel good way because you're going to type in, hey, this problem, this code, and you're going to see maybe this module has been a constant problem. Or, like I said earlier, you can have a technical service bulletin related to that too as well. Remember at the beginning? There you go. So in this case, good information available to you. So therefore, the list goes on and on and on. But again, it's all pretty nice. Even on older stuff, if I pull up an '03, and I'm going to pick a gas vehicle right now here. Okay, this is a 2003 1500 53, just to show you here. When we look at old service information, right? Please note the categories are pretty much the same. Here's engine, right? And in this case, when I select the 5.4.8, 5.3, those, you're going to see those formats are similar and their diagnostic information. But again, we have misfire issues and so on. So when a guy wants to do, because I was at a shop, they did gasoline vehicles and diesel vehicles. And boy, my gasoline skills were tested because it's been a while since I've done gasoline. And yes, I came from gasoline roots. And in this case, I'm like, okay, it's timing issue. It's not a timing issue, misfire issue, right? And in this case, we had a weak spark. The weak spark had a low voltage, had high voltage drop across the coils, blah, blah, blah. But in this case, we got all the information for somebody who's taking on gasoline or you're looking for help. Look at all that's available for you in diagnosing engine gasoline problems. So again, you have a whole bunch of this, even your oil pressure port, test port, where is it, right? So therefore you got that available for you. So again, please note what's available for you. You got to play with it. So like when James Wilson, my buddy James Wilson, instructor, teaches about scopes, he says when you're going to start with scopes, you got to work on a known good vehicle, right? So when you're working on a vehicle, you want to first get some acclimation with what you're working on, right? So if I move this over, for example, if I move this over to another totally different vehicle, I could commit suicide right now and say, hey, let's pick a BMW, right? So in this case, if I pick, I believe it's a 14, and I select BMW, right, because this is an all makes service information. And by the way, if you cannot find the information, call these people, these service providers, because they will help you in finding information there. So in this case, you're going to see the different engine. I'm trying to get a diesel one. Was it a 320? It's been a while. So I'm trying to find a diesel. But in this case, if I were to try to find a diesel, I'm going to pick anything not to waste time here. But in this case, if I try to find a diesel, that's a 2 for 2 diesel, but it doesn't matter. Oh, it's not available. Okay, let me pick over here, 335. And like I said, I'm committing suicide by be picking this because I'm not too experienced with it. But the reason why I'm doing that is to show you that, hey, I got service information access and I could start learning and reading up on it. That's what I'm trying to show you here. So here's their list of the BMW service information. So again, there's your technical data, your repair instructions, your engine electrical system. Obviously, their ways are going to be different. So as I play with this, I'm going to see how they approach their ways of doing stuff, right? So in this case, this is all repair instructions. We want to replace an ignition coil cover, engine coil, and so on. So yeah, they categorize it different than what I'm used to. So, but in this case, it's all normal. It's all normal to see. So you have to learn how to navigate and how to find it from air conditioning systems, repair instructions. Okay, how do you want to repair? So you'll notice how they put their categories there, right? So, it's all nice and neat, but you got to again, be able to be brave and take it on and say, okay, where's this? Where's that? I can't find what I was looking at. So this should be done once again when you're actually, trying to develop your skills, because the faster you can find that information, the more efficient you can be in assessing, okay, what is, or how do I approach, or how do I assemble this? How does this go together? Because how many of you have gotten that vehicle that comes in pieces, right? I've had a few phone calls lately where they're bringing me a complete 6.7 Power Stroke and they're in pieces, and it's funny how that happens. As a matter of fact, I was talking to a tech last week where he was telling me, he's like, I can't tell you how many people watch too many YouTube videos and they take it apart. And now they can't put it back together. And I'm trying to figure out where everything goes. Well, again, who's going to be our helpful guide? Another YouTube video, maybe, but it also is your service information of what you're looking at there. So, again, hopefully I made a point here. Have we made a point there? Have we not made a point? I hope we have. But again, we have to make it a serious effort to learn our service information here, guys. Definitely want to do that. So I'm trying to get back to my PowerPoint here. Is this my PowerPoint? Hold on. I'm trying to get back to my PowerPoint. There we go. So when we were talking about the information that's available, the list goes on and on. So know how things work. Have you tried to follow that service manual, like I said earlier? In torquing, oh, Jesus, please. Have I made that point across of looking up torque specifications? Follow procedures. Wiring diagrams, we show you that. Component locations, connector end views. And like I said, you're going to work on other subsystems. What if the vehicle comes in with an ABS condition, a connector issue, and so on, right? All of those subsystems that are available now on today's vehicles. And you guys saw, you got a good view of that gateway module on the data link connector. So this is just a show and tell of what is available in your service information. That has been my Bible. I mean, that is the Bible for learning what's new, what's old, where I need to find, where is what for me to follow procedures, and that's what's going to make you a better technician. So there you go. Well, Mr. David, I'm just about, I don't even know where I'm at on time. So
You are. It's like 20 after.
oh, really? Okay, cool. I don't
Yeah.
have the clock in front of me. So
Yeah, 19 or so after. So we're doing pretty
okay.
good. Tony, I appreciate all the really, really good information. If you just want to go back one slide there.
Yeah, sorry.
There you go. No problem. And appreciate all that very, very good information. I think you got a lot of good points over in this presentation. One question that comes to mind logically or logistically is, you take a typical shop, okay? All of us say start at, you come in 7:30 in the morning, you got to get started by 8 o'clock. You get a vehicle in, you're working on a vehicle, other guys are working on other vehicles, you got a parking lot outside, more vehicles parked outside, and as soon as you finish with that one vehicle, customer comes, picks it up, you bring the next vehicle in, and so and so, and the week goes on, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and you think, the weekend. When does one really, do you have any suggestions as these learning sessions or trying to keep up to date with all the new technical bulletins, all the information that's out there, and as you just showed, so much information available at your fingertips, really. But should we be having, say, for example, a lunch and learn, like on a Friday, for example, instead of having like 30 minutes for lunch, you have maybe an hour for lunch or an hour and a quarter or something like this, all get together in the lunch room and go over a lot of material like this. How would you recommend that a typical shop, tries to keep up to date rather than say one guy learn a lot and the other guy, well, I'm a bit lazy, I don't learn a lot, and then the other guy who has learned a lot, has to come, and answer all the questions. How do you do this? How do you do that? How do you do the other? And that's unfair on that particular person. How do we go? Any suggestions how we go about learning all of these various different new bulletins, new information that's out there? How would you go about that? Any recommendations?
First of all, I was in the last few months, I've been working at shop. I've been contracted to work at shops, which, by the way, I do that. And in this case, um, the drive behind the training is the shop owner because it hurts his bottom dollar. Okay, the
Hmm.
bottom dollar. I mean, I'm looking at shop owners and they're stressing, and so what they've developed is, let's get together. Like one shop, actually, they encourage the guys to stay late on a Wednesday. He buys them dinner and so on, and let's talk technical. Some other shops will buy lunch every so many weeks, and we're going to have a meeting. It's not a meeting per se; it's just a let's get together and let's update on what's going on.
Hmm.
I also have done webinars at noon for shops. I haven't done some lately. That's kind of dried up. We should be doing that again. But in this case, you got to find a time, whether in the morning, afternoon, or evening, to actually make the time because it's when the way I sell it to shop owners, because shop owners get in that mentality. I got to get the jobs out, like you were saying. The day comes to an end, everything's going so fast, but you need to make the time to stop the chaos
Right.
and say, hey, we need to stop back. Because when I go to a shop, and this is a common story, every shop that I've been to in this last year and a half, 2 years, all had two, three, four vehicles that have been sitting there for more than a year.
Wow.
And to me, that's what? And this last shop that I was at, that service writer, after I figured out to help him figure out the problem and we got the truck done, you should have seen the service. He was livid because he was running out of excuses what to tell the owner of the vehicle, a year. And he was not happy. I said, let him vent. I even told the shop owner, let him vent. The poor guy is just, he's mad. So therefore, the chaos can get worse if you don't stop that chaos and say, hey, we need to take time to have a lunch meeting, have a dinner meeting, whatever it is, and let's discuss what's going on. And that's why sometimes I don't like to have training at shops for sometimes because of the fact that's why I like them to come to me or come to a location because you got all that distraction. This truck, hey, where are you with this truck? And he's in the classroom. That's another bad thing too. So I kind of make it a rule, try not to interrupt the class, please, because we're trying to teach you something here. And fortunately, on most of the places we have taken that and applied it at the shop there. So that kind of has worked too. But again, it all comes down to the technician making the time. Yes, I
Right.
understand you just had an 8, 9 hour day, maybe a half hour before you go to bed. However, let's look at the service information. Hey, don't get me wrong. When I get done with classes at a shop or I'm here training and I come back and I'm sitting in front of the computer, all of a sudden I'm like, I saw this problem, and you're going to see me spend 45 minutes in front of the computer reading up on this or reading up on this because I got a guy on the other end of at the phone that might need his help that he's waiting for my answer, and I
Right.
got to come through for him. So what has been, my friend? Service information. So this is what's required out of you. So if you want to keep working on these trucks, if you're already behind and you're dealing with new vehicles and you're still behind, it's like it's going to make the matters worse. So yeah, it's already happening though, David. I mean, you guys can agree it's already happening. And what I
Right.
mean by that is we are seeing shops fail. And it's sad to see some shops actually starting to close the doors because they're losing money, because
Right.
of technician incompetent what's going on. So, like I said already, please note you're gonna have to make the time to update. People have always had my phone number and they can email me, and sometimes I don't hear from nobody, sometimes I do, but in this case, you gotta find and the time to do it. So,
Sure. Thank you. We have one more question and then we're going to wind things up here. The question is says we have a 2015 Ford 650, F650 with a P132B turbo and a P20EE SCR codes. Is diagnostics same for an F550? And if not, where do we go for an F650 info?
between you and me and the wall, yes, it is the same, but you can go to motorcraftservice.com. That's at motorcraftservice.com. And you can actually buy a 72, what is it, a 72-hour subscription? So you
Hmm.
can get for your 650 and 750, which I have done. So therefore you can get it from there. So there's your answer there. So, but between you and me and the wall, the 550 and 650s are relatively almost the same. So obviously their software is different. Don't get me wrong. Their software is different, but their general code analysis is almost just about the same. So we got quite a few here in Vegas. So there's
All
your
right.
answer.
Very good.
Motorcraftservice.com.
Very good. Well, with that, I want to thank you very much again, Tony, for a lot of very, very good information. We really appreciate it. And we'll look forward to seeing you again next month. So for all of you out there, please be on the lookout for your email, and we'll let you know what date and same time as usual, but what date the March webinar will be. Very much thank everybody for their support of Lucas Diesel Systems, and please keep us in mind for the future. Thank you very much, Tony. Goodbye.
Thank you.
Take care.